Yeah, I'm able to hear you clearly.
Okay, Dolores, how about you?
Yes, indeed.
All righty. How about you, Ms. Walsh? Can you hear us? Good. All right. Everybody's A-okay. Okay. You ready, Scott? You can call the meeting to order. Okay. I call the meeting of the Select Board to order Tuesday, May 30th at 7:03 PM. A motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Roll call vote, Mr. Gito.
I'm here.
Mr. Gito is here, Mr. Carrera,
Here.
Steve Cavey, Mr. Cavey.
Present.
Okay. And Mr. McCrisky is absent today, but I am here. I asked everyone to stand if you're able to salute our flag. In accordance with Governor Baker's declaration of June 16, 2021, granting certain pandemic-related authorizations related to public board and town meetings, and recently extended until March 31st, 2025, this meeting will be conducted both in person and virtually via Google Meets. The meeting will be recorded by Smack Cable Television and broadcast live and may be live streamed at www.stoughtontv.org. A recording of the meeting, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings will be posted on the town's website and/or SMAC as soon as possible after the meeting if the live broadcast or live streaming is unsuccessful. Times or approximate and items may be taken out of order at the chair's discretion. First item is Select Board's comments. Are there any Select Board comments? Oh, you do? That being none?
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes?
apologies. I just wanted to make sure that nobody else in the room had a comment. I just wanted to thank Sharon Johnson from the Veterans Agents Office for the work that she did with regard to the Memorial Day Parade. I thought it was a really fabulous service, and I know she put a lot of work into that, so I just wanted to recognize her and thank her for that hard work. Thank you.
Yes, we had a lot of fun. Mr. No comments?
No, that was going to be my comment, what Mr. Cavey said, that, and like you said, we did really have a good time marching yesterday, so I concur. Thanks.
Great. Moving right along to, town manager comments. Mr. Calder.
Madam Chair, I'm going to start rereading this again. I did not have my speaker on. I'm sorry about that. Paula Newt, the treasurer collector, has added the $15 demand fee on May 22nd, 2023 to the fiscal year 23 outstanding real estate and personal property tax bills. The demand bill is due in the collector's office or at the P.O. Box in Medford, Mass. on or before June 5th, 2023. An interest rate at a rate of 14% has been accruing on all unpaid quarterly balances since their due dates. All tax bills may be paid online at stoughton.org, and a drop box is located outside of Town Hall for taxpayer convenience. Also, the fiscal year 23 fourth quarter water, sewer, and trash bills were mailed on May 16, 2023, and are due on June 15, 2023. The water, sewer, and trash bills must be in the collector's office or at the P.O. Box in Medford, Mass. on or before June 15th to avoid interest. the $15 demand fee, and the bill from being leaned onto the fiscal year 2025 real estate tax bill. The water, sewer, and trash bill payments may be placed in the drop box outside Town Hall as well. Second announcement, Madam Chair, is from Mass DOT, dated May 15th. Dear Town Manager Coulter, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, MBTA, is continuing the preliminary design and permitting phase of the South Coast Rail project, and crews are going to be back in the field to conduct additional wetlands analysis. The purpose of this letter is to notify you that crews will be deployed along the right-of-way in Stoughton, evaluating wetland resources to confirm wetland resources and examine potential impacts. The evaluation team will be walking or high railing the MBTA-owned right-of-way. There may be limited disturbance with very small probes. This activity is necessary to continue to advance data collection to support the design effort. If you have any questions, please reach out to Jean Fox, Director of Community Engagement, South Coast Rail, and she has left her phone number and her email address. The last announcement I'd like to make is directly to board members, Madam Chair. The committee putting together the presentation for the rate increase public hearing for water, sewer, and solid waste is almost complete with their work, which also includes a brochure for residents. I'm asking each member at their convenience if they could come in and see me either this Friday at any time or the following Monday so that I can review the plan with each member individually and get any input that the members would like to give before we finalize the plan next week. It's our plan to have the final recommendation to you a week before your next board meeting, which is Tuesday the 13th. The hearing is on Tuesday the 13th. We will have a package to you the week before, but it would be helpful to get each member's input to the presentation and staff recommendations. So just to repeat, this coming Friday or the following Monday, anytime at each member's convenience. I'd appreciate if you could come in and see me so I could get your input on the presentation.
What dates would that be?
So, Gilda, this Friday would be the 2nd, I believe, and Monday's the 5th. So Friday is the, what did you say Friday is? Is the 2nd, and Monday is the 5th. And I'll be here long days, both days, so it doesn't matter if it's early morning or late evening. And then, as you know, I'll be out the rest of the week and be back the following Monday. All right, just would like to get your input so you're able to guide us as we complete the rest of this project. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Citizens' comments? Yes, please step forward, state your name
Thank you, Madam Chair.
and your address.
Peter Banis, 41 Walnut Court, Stoughton.
Peter, thank you for these cough drops.
You're welcome. Precinct 2, Town Meeting Rep. I observed, I put it in this letter, I'm going to read into the record a short letter. It's short for me, it's pretty good. But I reacted a little bit when I watched the treatment of Cynthia Walsh in one of these meetings I mentioned. And it just is ridiculous. There's a serious issue between the town and SMAC that I observed viewing water and sewer hearings of 4/13/23 and also the select board meeting of May 16th of 23. The controversy stems from the SMAC annual meeting of the Board of Directors on November 9th of 22, which I personally attended. The two mentioned meetings listed above showed some serious issues of concern. Strong personalities have presented lots of discussion and conflict. The recently expressed discussions show lots of misinformation and exaggeration. The importance of a good working relationship is respectful communication. During my attendance at that meeting at SMAC on the 9th of November, I did not observe anyone being spoken to in a threatening or disrespectful manner. Nobody on the SMAC Board of Directors raised their voices or treated speakers like animals or gangsters, as was mentioned. Nobody was escorted out of the building. by police detail. It seems that the town officials may have taken this information as fact. My reason for these comments tonight are in hopes of strengthening the relationship between SMAC and the town of Stoughton. The observed behaviors are uncomfortable atmosphere does nothing to help anybody. There is hope for the improved success of SMAC and the town of Stoughton relationship to be calm and transparent. Thank you very much. That ends my comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Madam
Mrs.
Chair, may I comment on that?
Yes, Mr.
For
Coulter.
information members, Peter, you may want to hear this. I've requested and received a video of that night, November 9th. As you and I have always agreed, facts are friendly. So I'm having copies made for each member so that you know firsthand what occurred that evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I did question if they recorded their meetings, if they follow open meeting laws, so I'm glad it was recorded. Thank you. Mrs. Walsh, please state your name and address.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. I'm afraid I was like just about everybody else until a couple of years ago when my health began to decline. How accessible a building wasn't a big deal. Now it is a really big deal. And you may have noticed that I wasn't the only one at town meeting that was having some mobility issues. And I want to thank everyone who rose to the occasion and tried to accommodate me as best they could. But there's some things that have disturbed me as I've made my way around town. It appears that just about everything we've built in the last 25 years has been not up to par as far as accessibility. And the two most recent buildings are the worst, the library and the high school. When I entered the high school, there's no railings. There's a curb cut if I were in a wheelchair. There's no railings. There's no benches. The automatic doors don't function. And then there's a long walk to the auditorium. The bathrooms are not conveniently located. Again, you have to walk back and down a hallway. What amazes me is that this building is the best. And this building is over 140 years old. Granted, it's been retrofitted. But you have a comfortable ramp, railings on both sides, automatic doors for both doors, a short walk across the foyer to the elevator. The elevator brings you directly into the Great Hall. You just have to find a seat. And I find it remarkable that we're building brand new buildings that are less accessible than a building that's over 140 years old. My request, and I've made this request before, is in your capital plans, I'd like to see some subset somewhere where some effort is being made to bring these buildings that aren't accessible as they should be, up to par. Some of them just need an automatic door. Some just need a railing. Some need massive work, and it's unfortunate. We are going to be building another new building, and it's the fire station. Granted, the public doesn't spend a lot of time at the firehouse, but my request is that either a disabled member of the public or a member of the Commission on Disabilities be appointed to any building committee to kind of monitor any part of the firehouse that's going to be accessible to the public. Should be accessible to all the public, not just the able-bodied public. And if they plan on having any meeting spaces or any place where they'll be inviting the public in for a ceremony, those portions of the station should be accessible to everyone, not just the chosen few. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Walsh. Mr. Calder.
Madam Chair, through you to Cynthia, you're so right. I had the opportunity to do a tour of town buildings last week and was very disturbed over the number of buildings that were not accessible. I met with the chairlady of the Disabilities Commission several weeks ago, and we are working toward getting a grant to do an evaluation of all town buildings for their access for people with disabilities. So you're right on, Cynthia. I thank you for bringing it to us, and we're on it. And what we'll do, once we get that evaluation, that grant money and do the evaluation, we'll get prices on every one of the projects and incorporate it right into the revolving 4-year capital plan. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other comments from the citizens? Okay.
I guess I would like to comment on Ms. Walsh's comment.
Yes, Mr.
I
Gito.
couldn't agree with her more. I observed the same situations in the 2 new buildings. I'm not too young, and it is a problem. I also, many years ago, was in an organization where the administrator of that organization was disabled. And I traveled with him to many conferences, and it was remarkable how difficult it was to find buildings where it was accessible to people. And we've had that law on the books for decades. As a matter of fact, probably since I was first on the Board of Selectmen. And we've done so little in that area. And I thank you, Cynthia, for bringing that up. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager, and I would hope that the Disability Commission would be invited to look at all of the plans of buildings that are going to be built in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So, let's see, it's 7:20 and the public hearing doesn't start until 7:30. Did you want to move along to another item? We can take it out of order. Mr. Gito, did you want to, or Trish? Mr. Gito, did you want to take item number 9 out of order? Water, sewer, relief programs. Huh? Oh, okay, we could do consent agenda.
I would be happy to do that, except that I thought that town council might be on, or is that not going to happen? If it's okay, if it's not, I can move ahead.
I had suggested, Mr. Gito, we would do the consent agenda. He is coming on by appointment,
Okay,
but I think it's at 8 o'clock. Mr. Chair. 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock?
I could do the earlier one now, if you'd like. Number 7, would number 7 be
Yeah.
something we could deal with?
Yes, I think we can deal with item number 7, which is discuss nominations and formation of the Climate Action Plan Committee in accordance with Article 71 of the 2023 Annual Town Meeting warrant.
Okay, well,
Mr. Gito, would you like to take the lead?
I would. Gilda put a copy of a motion that I think would be in order in front of each of you. I don't believe that Mr. Cavey has a copy. Unfortunately, I didn't realize he was not going to be here. But I could read it. The reason for bringing this item forward is that we are to establish a committee by basically the end of this month, or the end of June, excuse me. And so we would need to get an advertisement in the paper in order to accomplish that. And if you would like, I could read a motion on that, and
Please, Mr. Dito.
we could act on it.
Yes.
The motion is that the Select Board advertise for Stoughton residents to serve as Select Board appointees on the Climate Action Planning Committee, approved by this 2023 annual town meeting. The advertisement should read as follows, and in accordance also with other language generally required for such postings. The Select Board is seeking Town of Stoughton applicants for the Climate Action Plan Committee approved by this 2023 annual town meeting. This will be a town committee made up of volunteers interested in formulating climate action goals for the town and producing a comprehensive climate change mitigation plan for Stoughton. The Select Board is seeking applicants with an interest in protecting the environment and fighting climate change. Educational background or expertise in the area would be useful but not required. The Action Plan Committee is to be composed of 9 members as follows: the Town Energy Manager, 1 member to be a town employee appointed by the Town Manager, 1 member to be appointed by the Stoughton Energy and Sustainability Committee, and 6 members to be appointed by the Select Board following public posting of openings. The committee shall meet in public meetings biweekly, shall be authorized with town manager approval to seek grant support, and shall be charged with issuing recommendations and a comprehensive final report no later than June 30th, 2025. So that's the motion.
Second.
Sorry. Any discussion on this motion? Mr. Carrara?
Yeah,
Oh, Mr. Carrara or Mr. Cavey?
I'll go first.
Okay, Mr. Carrara, please.
First, I looked at Exhibit A in my packet that I got from our secretary, and the town energy manager. Is that a paid position, or is that going to be a volunteer position? There's no delineation that says anything if the group's going to hire the person as a consultant, or is it going to be somebody that's picked on the board who has the expertise in that? There's nothing here that states that. Then it says 1 member will be appointed, a town employee appointed by the town manager. Now, this is no stab at you or anything, but it should be delineated that the person that's picked should have some skills to offer this board, this new committee. And I think it should be, there's no term limits on any of these things. It doesn't say how long they're going to be, but I think the member that's appointed by the town manager, it should always be a 1-year appointment, because the person that could be appointed might have some duties that would not allow them to fill that, and somebody else might need to fill the position, and the town manager would see somebody more qualified to do that. Then we get to the 6 members, and it says nothing about set terms. This is going to cause a problem with us. Somebody leaves, and then are we going to run right out and say we're going to appoint somebody? Are we going to pick a time? Or are we going to just let it roll along like some of these committees go, that we just turn our backs on it? So I appreciate the motion, and then when I get into Lou's motion, it says the committee will be made up of volunteers interested in formulating climate action goals and change. I would think that it should say, made up of citizens that live in the town of Stoughton. I don't need somebody from Canton or Norwood or Bill Ricker coming here to tell us, the citizens of this town, what we're going to do in a climate control change. There's a few holes in this. In my eyes, you guys can vote it to go forward, but it's a little open-ended, and I think it's got to be tightened up a little bit, and a proper committee should have proper controls put on it, because it's too out of control.
May I respond to some of that?
Yes, please, Mr.
And
Gito.
maybe the town manager would like to respond to the
And then Vice
town
Chair
energy
Katie.
manager, because I think that he was about to do that. So why don't you do that first, and then we'll get to the other items.
Thank you, Mr. Gito, for that. The energy man, thank you very much. The energy manager is Pam McCarthy. It's part of her job description. She recently, in a very exciting way, just negotiated a 3-year contract with the utility that will stabilize our residents' electric rates through the winter when they tend to spike. So there'll be no stipend added on. There'll be no additional compensation. She enjoys doing it. She does a great job at it. And so that's Pam McCarthy. We wouldn't be hiring anybody. And I think Mr. Gito wants to respond to the rest of the issues. Go ahead, Mr. Gito.
Thank you very much.
For you, Madam Chair.
As for the people on the committee that we appoint needing to be town residents, the beginning of the second paragraph reads, "The Select Board is seeking Town of Stoughton applicants for the Climate Action Committee." So I think that that addresses that part of it. And as for the time period, the committee is supposed to complete its work by June 30th, 2025, which is 2 years from now. The membership is, as was stated directly in the article the town meeting approved. So I hope that I've addressed all of the issues that were raised. I didn't try to go beyond the scope of the article that was approved quite substantially by town meeting.
Can I read?
Vice Chair Katie, you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, just a couple comments. First of all, Mr. Carrera's concerns some of them were concerns I had as well when this came to the floor of town meeting. And, I read through it a couple of times and I missed, but I think, the fourth or fifth time I noticed that there was actually an expiration date for this committee, as Mr. Gito had just mentioned, that term limits aren't really necessary because they've only been our town meeting's vote only allows them to exist for 2 years, at which point they cease to exist. So I think that and their deliverables due in that time. So I don't think that we necessarily need term limits because it's going to be a very short period of time anyway. But I as far as Stoughton residents, I agree with that. I think that Mr. Gito's language to address that to my satisfaction, and as we run into candidates, I've got no problem simply asking them if they're Stoughton residents or just confirming that as well. So I think we can definitely address those concerns. As far as the motion goes, my only concern, which is not necessarily significant, but I don't think we've ever had a vote on the advertising for these kinds of positions before that at least not in the time period that I've been on the board. And so since our town manager and our the select board secretary are usually involved in the advertising part of it and taking ownership of that. I just want to make sure that they feel comfortable that there isn't something, either missing, or if there's something they need in addition. If there's any sort of discretion, they need to also be cooked into this vote to allow them the flexibility to do the work they need to do. If possible, I'd like to add it if they think there's something that they need, but I can't necessarily anticipate any of that happening. And on its face, I think Mr. Cheeto's motion covers most of our concerns, but I wanted to just confirm that. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gito. Thank you, Vice Chair Cavey. Mr. Gito.
that is why I also included, should read as follows, and in accordance with other language generally required for such postings, because I didn't try to make it complete. I just wanted to make sure that the people who applied would know what they were getting into. That was the purpose of this. And if the language doesn't have to be exactly like this, I don't think that, I think I allowed for change to occur as necessary. So that's, I hope, my final comment.
I'm satisfied. Thank you very much, Mr. Gito.
Yeah, Mr. Carrara.
I'm glad Mr. Cavey saw it the way I saw it, but it should read, the Select Board is seeking residents of the town of Stoughton as applicants for the climate. That's how it should read, not just Stoughton applicants, because anybody comes in and grabs an application will be a Stoughton applicant. They're not applying for the Canton one. They're applying for the Stoughton, so they're a Stoughton applicant. That would hold up in a court of law. That's true. You have to put the term either citizen of the town of Stoughton or a resident of the town of Stoughton, because they'll fight you tooth and nail.
So,
I
Mr.
would
Gito, would you
offer it
accept
as a
that as a
friendly
friendly? He will accept that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
I remember during our town meeting when this article was being presented, a doctor that specializes in this area, she spoke in favor of this, and she actually said that she wanted to be on the committee. Did anyone write her? Well, she's a town meeting rep, so we should be able to identify her, locate her, and not lose her enthusiasm. Laura. Mhm. Okay. So we do have to post it. I think this is something we should move forward on because it's important. The safety is so very important to all of us in the town of Stoughton. So we have a friendly amendment to insert the language about resident of the town of Stoughton. Was there anything else? Is that it? Okay. Motion was made, motion was amended. Did we get a second?
Can I
Second. Yeah, I seconded it, and I'll accept the amendment. Just as a reminder, because I'm not present in there, we're going to have to do all of the votes by roll call, so I apologize for that.
Is one person, Lou, through you, Madam Chairman, to Lou, it says one member to be appointed by the Stoughton Energy and Sustainability Committee. Would that be one person from their committee, or would it be somebody that they choose? That's what I meant to ask.
It says appointed by the committee. I think that they could either appoint someone from their committee or appoint someone that they would choose. The article at town meeting didn't specify one way or the other on that.
Well, that's why I was just asking for whatever the clarification was going to be.
I did not try to go any further than what town meeting voted on.
Mr. Coulter?
Madam Chair, my reading of that is that the committee would choose an appointee. I don't necessarily think it has to be a member from the Sustainability Committee, but maybe. It leaves it very vague, which gives them great flexibility. They're going to be appointed by the committee, but it does not disallow a member of the committee to be that appointee.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair Cavey.
As the petitioner for this article at town meeting is a member of the Energy and Sustainability Committee, I'd be surprised if she didn't want to be active in this, and this may very well be a seat that she would want to hold on the one hand. On the other hand, though this petition gave the select board the authority to appoint members to this committee, this is another question I didn't ask during town meeting. I didn't want to interrupt things. But so far as I understand, our jurisdiction sort of ends after that appointment. We have no role in it. It's a requirement of a separate branch of government of our town meeting. They report to town meeting. I don't think they report to us in any way. So I think that there's the questions about other committees and how they get to a point, I think falls outside of our jurisdiction. That isn't to say we can't ask the questions, but I'm not sure if the answers ought to have any bearing on our decision. I could be wrong about that, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Are there any other concerns? Okay. We're going to take a roll call vote. The motion's on the table, it's been amended. We got a second roll call vote. Mr. Gito. Mr. Carrara.
Yes.
Vice Chair Cavey.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. It is now 7:39. Public hearings. Vice Chair Cavey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a public hearing for a one-day, it's actually two one-day alcohol licenses, alcohol beverage licenses for Club Louise de Camoche at 76 Porter Street. I'll start by reading the notice of hearing. Town of Stoughton, notice of hearing. A public hearing will be held by the Select Board on May 30th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. to consider the application of Club Louise de Camoche located at 76 Porter Street for the application of two-day alcohol beverage license for the annual Holy Ghost Feast to be held on June 3rd, 2023 and June 4th, 2023. The public hearing will be conducted in Great Hall, 3rd floor, Town Hall, 10 Pearl Street, Stoughton, Massachusetts, and via Google Meets, and may be broadcast via Stoughton Media Access Television and live stream. Google Meets video link and telephone connection for public comment available by calling the Select Board office at 781-341-1300, extension 9212, or email to gpereira@stoughton-ma.gov by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Per order of Deborah C. Roberts, Chair, Select Board acting as a local licensing authority. The application is the applicant actually is the president on the call or in the Great Hall?
As you walk forward, just 1 minute, Mrs. Cochran, your item number, what was it? Item number 7, discuss nomination and formation of the Climate Action Plan Committee. It passed unanimously, so I just didn't want you to sit in the audience.
Okay, so it's taken care of?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you, and that will be on the website and in the circuit shopper, and also where to send the emails. Okay, I'll get the word out. Thank you.
Congratulations, yes. Bye-bye. Okay. Going back to our item number Public hearing. Motion to, the process will be, we'll open the public hearing. We'll, excuse me, we'll ask you some questions about your day, your organization, and the reason for this request. Then we'll ask the citizens of the town of Stoughton if they have any questions for you. Then we'll close the public hearing, and the select board will deliberate, and we'll make a decision. Vice Chair, okay.
I'm sorry. I've been through this a few times.
Oh, good.
I've been involved with the Holy Ghost feast for approximately 44 years. So everybody that's here, other than probably yourself and the town manager, has seen my face here before, including Ms. Walsh behind me many, many times. So
That's
I'm
wonderful.
sorry. Please continue.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair Cavey, you want to open the public hearing? Motion
Yeah,
to
make a
open?
make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, we have to do a roll call vote since one of our select board members is remote. Mr. Gito? Yes. Mr. Carrara?
Here. I mean, yes.
Vice Chair Cavey?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Public hearing is open. You want to,
So I'll
you want to
begin by
start?
going through the various town offices and their information back to us. Fire has no objection. Police had no objection to this event. They recommended 2 police details with a discretion of the use of a 3rd police detail granted to both the applicant and the town based on the number of attendees. I'll skip the Board of Health for a moment and just go move on to the building zoning had no issues. Treasurer's office had no objections. Water department had no objections. The Board of Health had no objections. There were a number of items that the applicant knows has probably, I know they've been in touch with the Board of Health to just to square away a couple of requirements, nothing major, but they did need to get some certifications and some, I think, a variance as well. They're aware of it. They've gone through all the steps to get that. I know the Board of Health is expected to do a pre-fest inspection just to make sure that everything's in line. But as I mentioned on the front, they had no objections to this application, and I know that Club Logistic Emotion has been working closely with them to make sure that all the requirements are met. So I apologize. I can't quite read the applicant's last name, but I see the first name is Joao. You don't mind just
The last name is Vasconcelos.
Vasconcelos, Mr. Vasconcelos. Thank you very much. So if you don't mind just taking a moment, letting us know about the event, what you're looking to do, and just kind of filling us in on the details.
Sure. This is a tradition that was brought over from Portugal when we first immigrated. This festa out of Club Luís de Camões at 76 Porter Street, this is our 54th year. We celebrated our 50th, which was rather successful in 2019. And then, as we all know, the bottom fell out of things, as a way of speaking. So this is the first time since 2019 that we have had our annual festa. It's a tradition, a Holy Ghost. It's a family-oriented Catholic where we have a membership where it's called the Brotherhood of the Holy Ghost Society, which we give, well, we don't give, but they pay yearly for what is called the pension, which is 5 pounds of fresh cut meat, a loaf of white bread, a loaf of sweet bread, and a liter of red wine, which they take home and fix it their own way. We, in return, on Sunday, will be cooking approximately 1,700 pounds of meat from Saturday night into Sunday morning, which we will give out to the general community. You don't have to be Portuguese, and everybody's welcome. We give out free food up in the hall of the club at 76 Porter Street. Bread, it's white bread soaked in the meat broth that the meat was cooked. The meat is cut up and served also. There'll be sweet bread, there'll be soda, there'll be wine, and like I said, it's all free. It's, we usually have somebody that pays for all this. Anything that's used, it's called sopas, which is soups in plural. Portuguese, we're kind of funny. Our grammar is quite intriguing. But I'm not here for to give you guys a lesson in our grammar. But it's a very hard work for everybody involved to cram all this in a 2-day. And then we also have the outside festivities, which will serve hot dogs, hamburgers, linguiça sandwiches. The ladies will be making 200 or 300 pounds of fried dough, which is made to order, piping hot. And then we'll have cold beer. We'll have Portuguese fava beans with chouriço and stuff like that. We have the meat on the stick, which is basically steak tips that's cooked over an open fire. So we have basically everything that you need to have a decent cookout. And I would like to extend an invitation to the select board. Mr. Cavey didn't mention, but that I'm sure he will, because I also have I asked for a permit for the procession on Sunday. We're going to church. Our mass is at 12:30 in the afternoon, so we'll probably be leaving the club shortly after noontime. And our route, what I asked for, the route, but that can be changed, but we normally go out of Porter Street across Washington, down Porter until we cross over the railroad tracks, or down Canton to 122 Canton Street, Immaculate Conception. And on the way back, we like to shoot down School Street, hook on to Washington Street, and then turn up into Porter Street, which is the kind of the easiest route coming back, but going there, it doesn't make much sense, but going this way that I first mentioned is easier. And we usually get help. I call the police station and they'll send somebody over, a cruise or whatever, and they'll guide us through the square, because it's a matter of maybe 7-8 minutes between the exit of Porter through Washington back into Porter Street in front of the town hall. So, and that's pretty much in a ball of wax. And like I said, I've only been doing this. I know I don't look 44, but I have been doing this for over 44 years. And it's a tradition that we don't want to see die off, but unfortunately, the handwriting is on the wall. And the younger generation, it's not that they don't want, it's just that they don't have the same instilled feelings about it that us old-timers do. But I put a lot of faith in the Holy Ghost, the third person of the Trinity, and I think we'll keep on going. As long as I can, I will. And that's all I can say. So once again, I went off, invite you guys to come and participate with us on the procession to church on the way back, and then to have some sopas. It's a new experience. It's I'll put it this way, it's an acquired taste, but it's our tradition, and we're trying to keep it alive. So I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, keep the traditions alive. Any questions from the Select Board? Okay. Oh, Mr. Coulter.
Madam Chair, if I may make one comment, as you and the fellow board members know, that we try very hard at Town Hall to be of service to the public, particularly those who are applying for something they have not applied for before. Following COVID, there were many challenges with the Board of Health, and I want to thank and recognize Mr. Tisdale, out of respect for this event, for personally walking this through and addressing and overcoming every barrier that the Board of Health and the health agent had in terms of issuing a permit. So Mark personally walked it through, and that's what we want to be about in this town hall. So I thank Mark for that.
I would also like to thank him. There were a few issues that were taken care of, and as the town manager pointed out, things that we weren't used to before COVID.
Yeah.
But since COVID, and it's understandable, and we try to do everything we could to accommodate Mr. Tisdale, but he was more than nice, and we appreciate that so much, because it took a little doing, but he did walk us through, and we came out of the other side.
I know I speak for Mark in saying it was his honor to do so.
I appreciate that, and I would like to thank him in person when I see him.
He'll drink the beer.
That's fine.
Are there any questions from the residents, from the citizens of the town of Stoughton? Oh, Mrs. Walsh, yes.
Obviously, I have no objection. This was the first one I marched in 1980, and my dad, the son of immigrants, attacked the zupa and wine with such gusto that people suspected he might indeed be Portuguese. But the Irish like their beef, and they like their soup, and they like their wine and beer. And he was thrilled to be my plus one. At those days, there were 3 different festas, and he looked forward to each and every one. I've known John since he was, I think, 10 or 11.
Yes. 1971, Miss Walsh, at the Jones School.
Oh, God, Miss Walsh was 22 years old.
And I was 11.
Those were the days. I think, John, you said you'd keep at it. The Italians in the North End have been doing their fiestas now for over 100 years. Hopefully more young people will develop a feeling for their heritage and continue this on. I know that when they attend, they always have a good time. And as I said, I have no objections. Are you going to have tips served people? Are you going to have one alcohol sell place with a tip serve person? Mm-hmm. Good. And one thing that John didn't mention, and I hope they still have it, is after the Chopa, homemade desserts. There's usually a table of those. Somebody makes an apple cake to die for. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the citizens of the town? How about from the Select Board?
Motion to close.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Gito, this is to close. Mr. Carrara?
Yes.
Vice Chair Cavey?
Yes.
And I vote yes to close as well. Motion
to approve.
Second.
All in favor, Vice Chair Cavey?
Yes.
Mr. Carrara?
Yes.
Mr. Gito?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Congratulations. And
Thank you very much.
thank you. Did you want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, application for road race?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, Vice Chair Cavey?
Yes.
Mr. Carrara?
Yes.
Mr. Gito?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So both were approved.
Thank you very much.
Contact will be.
I hope you have wonderful weather.
I hope so too. Sunday looks extremely promising. Saturday, yeah, but as long as it doesn't rain, people drink beer whether the sun is shining or not, and eat. So once again, yeah, I do. I know you do too, Scott. Once again, thank you very much. And like I said earlier, I extend an invitation to the Select Board and the Town Manager. Show up, you'll be welcome. Everybody's welcome. Thank you very much.
So
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you, too.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Mr. Meskin.
Everybody-
Thank you. for keeping
Everybody,
the,
thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Chisholm.
Cavey. If you ask around town for Johnny V, usually the finger is pointed at me.
Good night, bye-bye. Next agenda item is number 8, to consider rescinding the vote to reject the provisions of GL Chapter 59, Section 2D of supplemental tax assessments on new construction.
Madam Chair,
Bishop.
our acting assessor is here, and so is Brian Winter, who helped draft this.
Oh, great, great. Hello there. Please introduce yourself and
Sure.
your role within the town.
Trish Shropshire. I'm the IT director here, and I'm also helping out in the assessing department. So I'm here. Oh, sorry. I feel like I'm so short. Okay, so I'm here today because back in 2004, this body rejected a supplemental tax assessment on new construction that automatically went into effect with towns. So what I would like to do is just talk about it a little bit, and Brian is there, so I'm going to be very brief because he's an expert. Basically, this change was based on some municipal officials expressing concern that new construction created after January 1st was not added to the tax base until the subsequent year. So the intention of the supplemental assessment is to provide cities and towns with additional tax revenue from new development. It gives towns 6 months of additional growth, and it also offers the opportunity to do an abatement if there's a loss on a property. So when a house catches on fire, we're allowed to abate that property if it's more than 50% of its value is lost. So basically, we opted out, or Stoughton opted out in 2004. In 2004, it automatically was a supplement that all the towns got. And for some reason, this body opted out because the assessing department thought it was too much work back then. I really feel like it would be a benefit to the department, and that's it, unless you have any questions. But I think Brian, you gonna chime in? Hello, Brian.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Brian Winter, in case my name is not showing up there. I'm happy to answer any questions the board might have. I think Trish gave an excellent summary, and I can't really speak to the past as to why this vote was taken, but I can maybe provide just a little sort of bird's eye view of how this statute works. It's a little bit unusual. You're probably more familiar with statutes that a town has to opt into before it's effective, and this actually goes the opposite direction. It was automatically effective in every community unless the town opted out. And so, as you heard just a minute ago, the intent of this statute was to provide more flexibility, but essentially provide more opportunity for capturing, assessment revenue. So when the assessments were made at the beginning of the year, if there was a substantial improvement to the property, you wouldn't be able to capture that necessarily until the next year's assessment was made on it. And this statute allows the town to, get in the game a little bit earlier. So the board had, for whatever reasons, opted out of this program. But there's an opportunity to undo that and to essentially rescind your opt-out, which is essentially opting in, if you can follow that. And so it works both ways. So it's not just revenue capture, but it's also flexibility. And as you just heard, if someone has a property that suffered a heavy casualty, there was a catastrophic event, a fire, flood, something like that, they have the ability midstream to ask for an abatement and actually get their assessment lowered. And there's a really detailed process that I'm not going to get into as to, how this happens, when it happens, and what the process is. But the Department of Revenue has provided some pretty excellent guidance on all the ins and outs of this statutory program and what everyone needs to do and when they need to do it, so that it all fits together. But the very simple part is your vote tonight. The same way the board opted out, the board gets to opt back in, which is you send a letter to the, I think it's the Bureau of Accounts at the Division of Local Services, Department of Revenue. And it says the board on such and such a night took a vote under the statute to rescind its opt-out. And once that's filed, the statute becomes effective again. So it's really that simple in terms of entering into the program. It doesn't require a town meeting, it just requires a vote of this board. And I will put, if it's the board's wish to opt back into this program, I will draft a letter for the board to put on its letterhead and for the board to execute, and then we'll file that with the Department of Revenue, and that's really it. And so, of course, there's a lot of details beyond that, but that's beyond the scope of tonight's discussion. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Attorney Winter. Any select board, any questions from the select board? I have a couple of questions. Go ahead.
I don't have any questions, but I know I voted in 2004 to opt out because of the way it was explained to us and the way some of us understood it, and the way I understand it is when the permit's pulled on a new project, they want to start taxing it before it's finished. That's basically what's happening. And with the way things are going now, not even as bad as it was in '04, it's worse now, that you start taxing this project to get the tax money now before it's finished, it might impede the finishing of it, because the people are going to be like, oh, here's the new tax bill, here's what's happening. We can't afford to finish the kitchen. So now the kitchen sits unfinished, but they're paying. So that's the way it was explained in '04, and that's the way it is. I know what this is. This is, let's hurry up and grab money as fast as we can, because things are always taxed in the end. That's a finished project. We know what it's worth. We know what it is now. We'll have people coming in looking for abatements. You know, it's a funny thing to say, oh, people can get it on a burnt house. God forbid houses burn. But thank God you're not going to lose 30 houses, but you might gain 100 permits and be able to tax them over. So that's the way it was explained to us. I'm not for this now. This town has a budgeting group that does it. The finance committee looks at the budget. I don't think we need to grab every penny nickel from a resident when they're trying to better their property. We assess values every year. It used to be 10 years, then it was 3 years. Now it's every year, every year. Some people are so busy, they don't have the time to come up here in that window of opportunity to fight us. And it's tough. So I will not support this.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair Cavey.
I had a similar concern to Mr. Carrera, and as I was reading through the document, actually, this is more, I'd like to direct this as a question to Mr. Winter. When I'm reading it, unfortunately, the document doesn't have page numbers that I see. Oh, actually, sorry, top of page 3 of the guidelines. This is the informational guideline release. Top of page 3, there's a section that's actually has red lines on both sides, sort of it looks like you're trying to emphasize that. But below that, section 2A, there's occupancy permits, and it says assessments are triggered by the issuance of a temporary or permanent occupancy permit. Therefore, the assessors and building inspectors will have to develop a system for assuring the assessor's office receives timely notification of all occupancy permits. So what this, if I'm understanding correctly, it says is sort of counter to Mr. Carrera's statement. It seems like it's not until the project is done and an occupancy permit has been issued that this supplemental assessment would be possible. Is that correct?
Yeah, can I answer that, or do you want to answer, Brian? Sorry.
Either is fine. Madam Chair, I'm happy to respond.
Yes, please, Attorney Winter.
So I think Selectman Cavey, I think we have a different version. Mine's just the printout from the government website, so I don't have the highlights or any of the lines, but I know the section that you're speaking of. And there's actually another trigger as well. And so you're right. The first trigger has to be that there's a temporary or permanent occupancy permit issued. So keep in mind, a principle of assessing is we always, assess at the highest and best. And so once there's been an improvement to the property that warrants a temporary or permanent occupancy, that's one of the trigger points. But there's an and next to it. And so, and the new construction or improvement has increased the assessed value of the parcel by over 50%. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the occupancy permit. So a C of O is not going to do it all by itself. It's that the increase in value has to be of such significance that it warrants a supplemental assessment.
Thank you for that description. So I have a question, and excuse my voice too. I always thought of assessment as it's not a value until it's occupied. So what this pertains to both residential and commercial. So if the problem back in, I think it was 2004, that we didn't have the flexibility to manage this process, how are we going to do it now? Because we did have an issue with taxes just recently. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted some comfort on that.
So it actually allows us to, is my mic on? Yeah, instead of waiting till January, we can level it out. You're still going to have the same amount of work, but you have more time to spread it out. It actually works better in that manner. And the other thing I just wanted to say is that, you do need to have the occupancy permit, and the parcel value will only be if it's 50% over. So basically, these construction projects that are occupied, what will happen is they'll just get their tax bill a little earlier, which actually might help if it's a bigger tax bill instead of them getting it in the third quarter towards the end of the year. I think that's the reasoning for the supplemental tax assessment on the new construction. And it's only for parcel values that are, have a 50% increase in value. So it's not the little ones that are unoccupied. It's ones that are occupied by the owners.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair Cavey, and then Mr. Coulter.
Thank you. So in my own role, I see this take place sort of often, and it's usually done as an exercise, essentially. The purpose of it is as I understand it, is, you can imagine somebody doubles the size of their house, they build into their yard, it's huge, they double the property value, say, but they do it on January 15th. And then the house won't be assessed again until the following January. So you sort of miss a year of value. After that assessment's done, there's an additional leg of time before they actually receive a tax bill that reflects that assessment. So you can see, the value increase, but the value increase isn't taxed for up to 2 years.
Yeah.
And that normally you'd introduce like an excise tax to sort of jump in the middle there somewhere and force a revaluation or a tax based on the value of something. This seems to allow that to be this excise to be indeterminate, essentially. That there's no specific time. Now, I'm willing to be corrected on this. Having an attorney on always makes me nervous. He's going to tell me I have no idea what I'm talking about. But my understanding is this allows us, as Ms. Chopra said, to sort of capture these tax revenues that the community is entitled to at an earlier time period. But the important thing for me is that it's not simply done on a project that's sort of half built, and some sort of projected increase of value, but that there actually be an occupancy permit. So long as that's in there and it's actually a property being occupied and used, I don't see a problem with this. But that's just my own view on it.
So it's a mean to increase growth through tax incentives. This also, I can think of a couple of examples where we have some commercial properties that have been delayed in implementation. So I'm not going to call any names, but of a property, but you know what road I'm going down. So if they tell us that they are being their construction, new construction is being delayed because of supply chain issues, but we're also taxing them, I don't understand how that's going to work. It might hinder them completing the project because they're cash poor now.
Yeah, we would only be able to, this would only be for parcels that have occupancy permits. So they would need to be at a certain point to get the occupancy permit. And only if the parcel value is an increase of 50% or more than what it was. So it's not going to be for, every construction project.
And Madam Chair, may I chime in on that a little bit?
Yes, Attorney Winter, please.
I just wanted to sort of highlight kind of how the equation balances a little bit. I'm not trying to make a political comment here, just sort of a mathematical one, actually. So the occupancy permit is an important trigger because it means that the property owner is starting to receive the value of their construction. They've gotten an occupancy, so they're now exercising that highest and best use of the property, and that's the trigger for us to reassess or supplemental, assess. And so we wouldn't be allowed to issue that supplemental assessment unless and until they were already realizing the benefit of their construction by getting an occupancy. And again, there's still a 50% trigger. So not only would it be an occupancy permit, meaning that they're using their development, their house, their commercial building, their industrial building, but it would have to be a 50% improvement. So that's, I think, the balancing act in the statute. And again, I'm not trying to defend the statute, I'm just trying to explain it. But we wouldn't be seeking a supplemental assessment unless the property owner was already realizing that value in the first place. So you wouldn't, hypothetically, you wouldn't get a scenario where they started construction, had, supply chain difficulties, pricing difficulties on costing out materials, and they were getting taxed simultaneously. Because if they were that sort of stuck in the construction phase, they wouldn't be looking for an occupancy permit. They're still building. So we wouldn't be assessing a supplemental assessment at that point. So I just wanted to add that comment. So thank you.
That's very helpful. That's crystal clear. Are there any other questions?
I have one.
Yes, Mr. Gito.
Through you to to our attorney, I think probably would be the, Attorney Winter, does that mean that a property that is being improved, say a commercial building, a warehouse or a manufacturing facility that was adding on, say, 80% to what they had at the present time, does that mean that if we did not pass this, that the property could get, that addition could get to 90% complete and have use of that addition for the most part, but not be able to reassess it? I'm trying to understand what it is that that we are inhibiting or doing to make sure that we don't suffer greatly in this process. Is my question clear?
I think I understand, and let me see how I do with my response, and then
Okay.
we can try another round if I miss it. So in your scenario, if they were building it out and say they had gotten a temporary occupancy or an occupancy permit, but as in sort of Vice Chairman Cavey's scenario, it all happened, say, mid-January, and so it wasn't captured in the initial assessment, then they would have the benefit of using and occupying their new property as improved with their addition, but we wouldn't be assessing them for any addition. And so that would continue on until the next assessment, another cycle. So it'd be potentially a year and a half beyond that date before our systems would catch up and they'd get reassessed. And so we would miss that window there. And so they would be receiving the benefit of their construction and their occupancy and whatever else they're doing with it. But we wouldn't be capturing the improved value of that use and that land for some time under the current situation. Now, if the board opts into this program, there would be an opportunity to essentially re-up. And the trigger would be when they apply for that occupancy permit and they'd say, well, we're at 80% of the construction, we can actually get a temporary occupancy and start using, this new facility. And that would be a trigger for us to examine whether or not they met the 50% rule and they had a temporary or permanent occupancy, and then we could issue the supplemental assessment. So it allows us to get in the game a little bit earlier, provided those triggers are met. So is that responsive to your question, Selectman Gito?
Yeah, about the 70% level. The other part of it is if they don't complete that project, but it sort of lingers there at 90% complete for 2 or 3 years, are we able to capture the part that is complete?
So it's going to depend on the situation. There are certain projects that could receive a temporary C of O and they could start to occupy it and use it even though the project wasn't complete. But other projects, you wouldn't be able to do that. So for example, if it's a singular, addition, let's say it's a warehouse addition, and it's just one building, one space. Well, you either are going to get an occupancy or not. And so we'd either capture it or not. In other situations, it might be, maybe it's a multi-tenant space and they're building it out and they have, let's say there's 6 new commercial spaces and they get the first 4 done and those are ready to be occupied. Well, they could get occupancy permits for the first 4, but not the last 2. So we might capture some, but not all of it. So there's a couple different variations on the theme there when we start getting into the details. But the same sort of equation would hold true in each case. If they get an occupancy permit, we would have the ability to look at it and determine if the value had increased sufficiently for us to start assessing a supplemental tax.
I think I'm going to stop asking. My concern is if a person has an occupancy permit for a building and adds on to that building, they have the occupancy permit, and I presume that as other parts of that building get completed, even though the whole project is supposed to maybe double the size or triple the size of the building, maybe they are able to occupy more than half of the new part of the building, but they haven't completed the building. Do we have the ability to assess the building that's not complete at the full value that is complete and get taxes on that?
The portion that's not complete and is not occupied would not be eligible.
No, it would be part of it would be occupied. Part of that new, think of a building, two rectangles, one small one that's occupied, and another one that can be subdivided into 2 or 3 pieces. And as each of those pieces get occupied, that's another part of the building, but the whole project is not done.
So that's what I attempted to answer with the example of, 6 tenant spaces. 4 of them are done and occupied, but the other 2 aren't.
Okay.
So we can capture the ones that receive occupancy permits, but not the ones that don't.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Carrera.
Another comment is we're going to capture all this stuff, and we're going to hire another person to go and inspect. We'll have to hire somebody inside to handle just this stuff, to decipher it and put it together so that we can bill it out. Because we're going to hear that the departments are very busy now. They're understaffed. So there goes your capture right out the gate. And don't think for a minute that you capture it and you won't see it in the next budget, that we need this, we need that to capture this. So think about it. On top of the $30,000 insurance that you're going to give those people. There's a lot of things to look at this. You want to have somebody go out and capture it, you pay them a percentage of capturing it. That's how they do it in some other towns. This thing is a little seedling that's going to blossom because we can't wait 2 minutes because we need the money. That's what the budget people are going to be, Tom and the new group, the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee working together because he's got a good rapport. That's what you do. We don't go out and just see how you can choke and squeeze, and then you're going to sponge it all away later, hiring people that has to do it because there isn't personnel that's going to be able to get out and do that. You have one building inspector.
So this question is to Mr. Coulter or to Ms. Shropshire. Using last year or a prior year as a benchmark, if we had passed this amendment in a prior year, let's say last year, how much value or increased growth would we have acquired? Because usually new growth is about 800,000. So in this case, how much?
We budgeted growth 2 years ago at $800,000. It came in at $400,000.
Half, 50%.
And that was post-COVID, that was, of course, covered the COVID period where nothing was happening anyway. It's one of those situations, and I think Brian touched on it several times, is we should and could only tax when there is taxable value. If the value has not been increased by the owner's activities to the point where it adds 50% increased value, and it's got an owner occupancy, we can't tax for it. The only question is the timing. It's not fair to tax somebody before they achieve the value. I agree with Scott on that. It's also not fair that they achieve the value and don't pay taxes for a year and a half on it. So we are one of the few, if not only, communities that opted out of this in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I think this board has always been very clear about being fair, very fair with residents. So I would debate with Scott whether it's a tax grab. If it's not fair, we would not do it. That's the direction you've given us. That's the direction we'll follow. Be fair with residents. But it's also not fair to our taxpayers that other people play the timing game, and because we opted out of this provision, they can enjoy the value of their investment for a year and a half without ever paying taxes on it. That's not fair to our current tax base that are struggling to pay their tax bills every month. This issue, more than anything, is not about increased taxation. It's about appropriate timing. If you look at the examples in your packet, it speaks to that very clearly. The town should never tax before a tax is appropriately due, and the taxpayers should be willing to pay their fair share upon the completion, as measured by an occupancy permit, of their project where they're earning and enjoying the value of that investment. Because presumably, if they got an occupancy permit, whether it's commercial or residential, they're taking advantage of the services of the town. Police, fire, schools, education, roadways, water, infrastructure. But yet, under the current system that we opted out of, there may be a period of as long as a year and a half to up to 2 years, depending upon days, whether you assessed it timely or not, where they've got a free lunch. I would argue that's not fair to the other 30,000 citizens.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Vice Chair Cavey.
Just to echo those comments, and to maybe, and I'm going to provide sort of the absurd example, right, of a building that had a single occupant in it, and on let's say January 15th, through a series of wonderful business decisions and good fortune, somebody builds an apartment building that can hold 1,000 people in it, and where there was only one person and now there's 1,000, and they will be assessed as though they still only have one occupant, even though they have 1,000, right? And that is an absurd example, obviously. But that's what's happening, and we wouldn't claw back. Like we can't go back and say 2 years ago you built this place and we were entitled to taxes then. And from 2 years ago and last year, we can only snap the line and say from here on this is what we're going to tax you at. And so, I think though the individual owners have rights, I think from what I can tell that this respects those rights. Not just the fact that the value has to increase by 50% is significant. It's a significant investment to increase a property by 50%. Not easy. You're not just fighting a guy who just mowed his lawn and now you're going to turn him upside down and shake all the coins out of his pants. There's a major investment in infrastructure and property that took place, and the public has a right to the taxes on that increased value, and what you ended up with is the public for up to 2 years subsidizing a company that was able to afford increasing or an entity of some kind able to increase its value by up to 50%, and the rest of the community is subsidizing that. I do see Mr. Carrera's point. I think that it's important not to abuse people and sort of and go out of your way to grab to do the money grab. I don't see that happening here. I think this is quite a different situation, and for that reason, I'm not surprised that was so rare for communities to opt out of this, because you're really giving people who are investing heavily in you know, I would imagine if you're increasing some property by up to 50%, you are enjoying some sort of an economic benefit from that. We're giving them a free ride for a couple of years, up to a couple of years, to enjoy that tax-free, essentially. And that's not fair to the general public, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cavey.
Is it
My
okay?
question.
Yep.
Oh,
Can
go
I-
ahead.
Can I just say something?
Yes, please.
I also wanted to say that this actually allows us to bait somebody. If a house catches on fire and the house is no longer there, we can't give them an abatement. And this allows us to do that to the property. Not that we have that many fires, but we do. And it's just heart-wrenching when they call and they want an abatement, and we're tied to the fact that we can't do it. So I wanted to say that this goes both ways. That's all.
So I understand the theory or the philosophy of it, but my question now is based on the process, and is it an efficient process? So this means we just have online permits. So can you just talk us through how you're going to work closer with
Sure.
departments to
Sure.
get those permits?
So you're talking about the online permitting, which is something that's going to happen hopefully next year. What this allows us to do is the construction permits, it just gives us an additional 6 months to work on that. So instead of the cutoff date being January 1st, it's July 1st, or June 30th, I'm sorry. But your question, Madam Chair, about the electronic permitting, I think that's going to be a nice tool for us to know when people get occupancy permits. Right now, everything's done by paper. I think it's going to help the construction people themselves. I think it's just going to help everybody work a little bit more cohesively. But this is too.
Could you try again?
My phone, my watch. So this is something that we just feel would benefit the town. We're not trying to, get any taxes out of anybody that, shouldn't be paying them. And we also feel that if somebody does have a fire, that they should be abated. Well, we should be able to do something for them. Our hands are tied if a house does burn down. We can't by law give them abatement, and they're still on the fence, or whatever you call it, for paying their taxes on a burned property.
Yes, Mr. Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Even before online permitting comes about, which will streamline everything, and I think deal with some of Scott's concerns about staff creep, we deal with paper right now. So what would trigger it is an occupancy permit. Before a business or a family can move into their new addition, their new dwelling, they would have to get an occupancy permit. That piece of paper will trigger this issue. In the absence of being in this program under the statute or under the regulation, we'll get that information, but there's nothing we can do about it until next January. So again, I keep arguing it's a timing and a fairness issue. And again, we staff take our direction from this board, and Scott has always said, you've always said, everybody's always said, treat our residents like family. So no one's trying to jam anybody up with taxes that are not due. It's protecting the entire community, the whole, from subsidizing businesses that play the calendar, and it's not just homeowners, it's businesses that play the calendar, and they purposely don't ask for an occupancy permit until a day after we can tax them. It happens in almost every town. I remember the discussion of this statute in the legislature. It is really about fairness and equity. The staff knows this board's position on fairness and equity. And we would not put forth a recommendation like this if it was intended to be fair or inequitable.
Thank you, Mr. Coulter. If there are no other questions, Are you prepared to make a motion and take a vote?
I would have one quick question, but I believe I know the answer, and that is, we had a house that blew up. And from what I'm hearing, those people may not be able to get an abatement. That seems quite unfair. And if I'm right, I guess I'd like to know that. And if I'm wrong, I'd like to know that as well.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Well, that'd be the law that you'd want to change and enforce in the town with something like that. So if a house burns, the board votes to give an abatement. That's what I would vote for. I don't need the double-edged sword held to their throat. Burn your house down, but you'll get an abatement.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Vice Chair Cavey.
if there are no further questions, I'd like to make a motion to rescind the vote to reject the provisions of General Law, Chapter 59, Section 2D of supplement tax assessment on new construction.
Second.
On the vote, Vice Chair Cavey,
Yes.
Mr. Gito,
Yes.
Mr. Carrara,
No.
and I vote yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Trish. Oh, before
Have a
you
good
go.
night.
Before
Thank
you,
you.
Trish,
Yes.
before you go, the last item, which is number 9. I'm sorry, what was that?
You want to ask him to hang in there?
Yes, please. Attorney Winter, yes.
Brian, if you wouldn't mind hanging in there, we're going to take up the issue that you and Lou developed on the subsidies. If you just hang in there,
Certainly.
it's the last agenda item. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, Mr. Gito, would you take the lead on item number 9?
Yes, I will. Thank you very much. I contacted Attorney Winter a few weeks ago because I wanted to make sure that we provided assistance to those who needed financial relief if we raise water and sewer rates. Want to make sure that we did what we could to help those people if we were to raise the rates, because I thought it was important to do that. And he responded and provided information on programs that might be available, and also an extensive list of legislative relief that was available to people. And he also provided a couple of instances of times when the board over the past 5 or 6 years has provided relief to the Greenbrook and another subdivision in that area, the Buckley Estate development as well. So I knew that this would probably come up in any discussions that we had, and I wanted to make sure that we were aware of the things that were available, and I tried to provide that information to the board or have Mr. Winter, Attorney Winter, do that. And all of those examples were for people on an individual basis to be able to seek relief, not giving general relief to the entire town or anything of that nature. And I guess sort of as a backdrop to our discussion about that, and I'd like to go over some of the services that we do provide in terms of water and sewer through the enterprise account, and what an enterprise account really requires us to do, which is to fully fund it. So our services in the water area are to provide, I say this, all of this, because when people think about water and sewer, they think about, oh, well, you know, do we pay more for our drink of water here, or do we, when we go to the supermarket and see a 12-ounce can, you know, is that really what we're paying for? We're paying for a great amount more than that. You know, there's the direct consumption part of it when we drink, when we cook food, we clean food prior to cooking, we bathe in it, we wash our clothes, we flush our waste down the system, we clean the house, we water outside, we clean outside, we do our car, we do a whole lot of other things. And you know what? Our fire system wouldn't work if we didn't have a water system. It's the fire suppression system for the town. And on the sewer system side, we take the water and wastewater products that the water carries through our house system and puts it into the sewer and transports it to the MWRA, which takes the water and treats it and does so at a price that we could not afford to pay if we were to do it ourselves, because we don't have any place to put a sewage treatment plant. We would have to treat that water almost to drinking water standards in order to be able to use it. So I say all of that because we sort of undervalue what the town provides in terms of water and sewer. And we expect our enterprise systems to pay for themselves. Our enterprise systems are underfunded by about $1.2 million apiece. If we look at that, the water and sewer, that's about $2.5 million. That's the price of what we paid in the article for town meeting to support our roadway system. There are something like 34 towns, streets on this list to be fixed this next year for about $2.5 or $2.6 million. If we don't fund that, then this list goes away or gets cut in half or less. So what do we say to there's 34 streets? Let's say that there's 10 people or houses per street on that. That's 340 houses. What do we say to those people if we don't fund these? You know, it's going to take years for that to happen because it just cascades along. So, you know, I wanted to highlight this because, as I said, so many people just look at our town water system and sewer system as though it's a given. It's not a given. There are people who keep it going all the time. We have to pay for it all the time. You know, we're not only dealing with the people who have houses in the town, we're dealing with our schools, we're dealing with all the businesses in town as well. You know, if we didn't have a good water system and a good sewer system, we couldn't have a good town. We sort of undervalue this part of the service of our town. You know, it is the bedrock of being able to have a complex society. And we need to understand that. So when we think about dealing with paying for something like this, we need to keep that in mind. So that's sort of the broad look at it. And Brian can come back and explain any of the other parts in terms of the individual parts of the system that people can avail themselves of in order to get relief for those situations where there are real financial problems. So that's my brief story on that, Madam Chair. And anybody else who wants to chime in may do so.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gito. Mr. Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to follow up on Mr. Gito's comments, and I mean what I'm about to say with great sincerity. Lou has been working with us diligently on this working group trying to figure out how to balance our enterprise funds, and he's added, as I've told you, tremendous value. And I know he's as close to this now as the people on the working committee are close to this right now. And I just want to reiterate 2 points Lou has made. Number one, that water and sewer is not a blessed right. It's a beautiful convenience that not everybody in this world benefits from. And it's costly, and it costs money. And they are not departments that we can underfund and expect that we're still going to enjoy the same level of quality that they deliver right now. And that day of making those hard decisions is coming. It's June 13th. The second point that Lou makes, and I really appreciate his empathy for people that will be affected by proposed rate increases, is that there are tremendous amount of programs out there that perhaps Brian can speak to in a minute that provide the type of relief that folks may need. And as I said at the beginning of this meeting, this board has made clear to every member of this staff that it's our job to serve the residents of Stoughton. It's not their job to serve us. And I agree with that. And that's why I enjoy being here so much. We recognize that if proposed rate increases cause financial distress or harm or whatever, that we will work with those citizens to help make those programs available to them. I think earlier maybe somebody had understood this to meaning the board was going to take a vote on adopting policies on subsidies when we don't even know what our exact costs are. So we can't determine how much we can do in subsidies. Knowing from working with Lou as close as I have been the last month, this is only to suggest to the public that there is relief out there. So there are two things that are well known. We have to pay for our water and sewer and solid waste services. And point two, there are programs out there that we can use to help assist citizens that may be too big of a strain for them. Lou, did that categorize it appropriately, or do you want to editorialize on that, which I would understand?
I'm happy.
Brian, can you give us just a brief overview of the type of programs that you have found in researching this for Mr. Gito?
Certainly, I'm happy to do that. And as you both had mentioned, and I guess I'll just highlight before I go into my memo a little bit, the existence of these programs and these options is one thing, but communicating them to the affected residents is another. And so I think you both highlighted that in your comments. And it's equally as important because in some of the instances that I've interacted with the town and with affected consumers before, they had counsel and they were represented and they had people who guided them to these resources and through these processes, and not everyone has that. And so Education and outreach are equally as important. That's not part of my memo, but you both touched on it. I think it's very important, and so I just wanted to highlight it a little bit. So the memo that I provided to all of you is kind of broken, I think, conceptually into two sections, and I'm just going to touch upon each one briefly, because the two sort of major buckets, major categories, Selectman Gito and I discussed were, what can we do now, and then what can we look at in terms of going forward. So what is sort of already on the books and available, and what are opportunities that we can provide today to individuals on a case-by-case basis. And so that's the first section of the memo. And some of those options already exist. They've been utilized in the past. So they can be utilized again. And that's predominantly the abatement process, but it requires, an affected consumer to initiate it. And in order to do that, they need to know it exists, and they need to navigate the process. And so I am aware of, the forms and the process just by virtue of my work with the town. But that doesn't mean that everybody else who's affected by the water and sewer rates and any changes in them necessarily knows the same thing. And so that's a component of this. And so that process basically allows someone to make their case to this board, because you sit as the water and sewer commissioners pursuant to the charter. And it's on a case-by-case basis. And so it's not a global policy that affects all your ratepayers, all your consumers. Someone could apply to this board and then explain what their situation is and how they're differently impacted than the rest of the community. And that could mean a whole lot of things, and they would have an opportunity to tell you what it means to them. And then you could make a decision based on their unique circumstances, and that gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility. It's not a 1 or a 0, and as hopefully you saw from the examples that I gave you, there's a lot of creativity that can go into that in order to address the needs of your applicant. And so those are things that are on your books already today, and they're available and people can make use of them. The second sort of broad category are things that may require some more formal action and might be available in the future. And so that's the second bucket in that memo. And there's a whole host of local adoption statutes and statutory programs. I believe some of these have already been adopted by the town, but just given the timeline, I wasn't able to research each one and the town meeting votes. Some of these might already be in effect, and some of them maybe not, but could be something that the board might take a look at as we proceed on this path. And so as I continue to sort of refine this and work with people in terms of developing and cultivating these options and what sort of pathways get us there, we'll look into that. And so I'll create eventually, essentially a matrix that'll show you what we've already done and what we could do and what those decisions would mean, and then how do we get there. And so as this memo kind of evolves into its next generation, we'll have that information for you. And some of these are very specific. They allow people to apply for very specific abatements under very specific circumstances. Other of them or other programs are a little bit more broader, and they might not directly concern water and sewer, but they concern relief for municipal charges and fees broadly. And so any relief, however you apportion it, might be relief that a resident or a family could benefit from. And so while it might not be, an abatement of their water bill, but if they get an abatement of a different bill, or they get some sort of other financial relief, for example, on their property taxes, then that's money back in their pocket that can be used somewhere else. It can be reallocated for some other expense that they have. And so there's a whole long list of programs that exist And we need to find out if we've either adopted them already, and if so, let's find a way to make that information available and how people avail themselves of that, and through which departments. Some of these things will go through your veteran services. Others may come from water and sewer, and so we'll need to look at each one of those as we proceed. And then there's the last category, which is sort of the sort of broadest catch-all, which is if we go through all of these things and we're still not satisfied and we feel that there's more we could do, we could be more creative, we could institute our own program, maybe one that's unique to Stoughton's situation, then there's always the option for special legislation, a bylaw, some other kind of legislative act, and then we can create the program. And so there's a lot, of course, that goes into doing something like that. It's not something you do on a whim, but that's something we can look at. And I've seen examples, and I think I cited one or two, where communities or a water district or a sewer district created a financial relief program on their own, and figured out how to finance that, figured out how to determine who was eligible for it, when they were eligible for it, how they applied for it, what the caps were on it, was it an annual basis, and so on and so forth. So there's still a sort of a third category out there that could be explored potentially, which is this special legislation possibility that if we've turned over every stone and it's still not working the way we hoped it would, and we're still not sort of bridging the gaps we hope to bridge, we could always look at some legislative relief to give us the power, give us the authority to do the thing that we haven't been able to do up until that point. And so obviously that's not something we can, do by the end of May, but it's more of a long-term goal. And so that's the sort of overview of the three sort of broad categories. There's the what do we have now, what could we have in the near future, and then sort of the long game. What could we look at in terms of relief and programs that we could create or make available in sort of a longer timeline. So happy to answer any more specific questions if you had on that. But there's a lot of information packed into that short little memo. So as we move forward, I'm sure we'll be unpacking a lot of that for you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Winter. Trish, did you have something to add? And then Town Manager Coulter.
Hi, I just wanted to add that on our website, under the assessing department, we have a list of things that we've already adopted. We have Clause 17D, which is, it's an income guideline thing, but it's for applicants that are over 70 that might be experiencing financial difficulty. We have Clause 41C, which is, which one is this one here? There's so many different ones here. It's the same thing, but it's for citizens that are 65 and older that have to, fit within the income and guidelines for assistance. We have Clause 37, which is for blind persons, and that's determined by the Commission on the Blind. We'd have to get a certificate from them to give them assistance on that. We have all the veterans' property tax exemptions. We have clauses 22, 22A, 22B, C, D, E, F, and H. And I just wanted to make you aware that all of these occur in all the forms, and we would be more than happy to help anybody fill them out in the assessing office. And we also have a senior work-off that people can apply for at the Council on Aging. So I just wanted to touch upon that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Coulter.
Madam Chair, the objective of this agenda item, as you'll note, it did not suggest that votes would be taken. This was simply to assure the public, and I commend Mr. Gito for bringing this to all of our attention, that as we're anticipating a very important rate hearing, at the same time, we want to reinforce to the public that there are programs out there that we will assist them in if they have difficulty with water, sewer, solid waste rates. But there was no intention of taking a vote before we knew what our overall costs were going to be. It was really just to inform the public that there are programs out there. We're going to be looking at other programs to assist our citizens, and that we're not going to leave anybody behind in terms of helping them get through any difficult period they may have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Coulter. So what is the deadline? So everything is cyclical. When is the deadline to have these applications completed in the assessor's office?
It's year-round.
A lot of these you can't fill out until July 1st, and what we also do, especially for our veterans, the community, is we send them reminders. I've had a couple pop in today, so we send out cards that I was just aware of. So thank you for that. I just wanted to make you aware that we do have programs for property taxes, and all of the things that we do offer are on the website. It's not water and sewer specific, but it was something to help.
Thank you for the reminder. This is very helpful. And for us, that's the last item we have. If there's no further business for the Select Board, I accept a motion to adjourn. Mr. Cavey, Vice Chair Cavey, did you have?
Nothing. I have nothing else. Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Can I get a second? All in favor by roll call vote. Mr. Gito. Vice Chair Cavey.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Tricia.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Tricia. See you next time.
Have a great night, everyone.